Now, I know there's just trauma after trauma happening in the world. So obviously, I'm a trauma therapist. I don't think trauma is a good thing, but I think there is a gift and a trigger that I'm going to share with you today. So welcome, whoever, however, wherever in the world you are today. You are so welcome here, and I'm celebrating that you're here with us. And I want to set this expectation. I hope you'll join me that we're here to uplift one another. I really believe that. I know a lot of you, I see some of your names and I know you, you've been through some of my trainings before. We've met in person even. And so I know what beautiful hearts and people, what beautiful hearts you have, what beautiful people you are. I'm super grateful you're here today. So this training will help you see trauma a little more clearly and to choose to contribute to healing in your life and in the life of those around you. It's super nice to meet you. Some of you might be new to me and my work. I'll introduce myself a little bit more in a moment, but you might be here because you know someone struggling with PTSD, post-traumatic stress. Maybe you've been through some trauma yourself. Most of us have. Perhaps you're holding space for others as a professional, mental health professional, healthcare professional. And I'm guessing you feel impacted when other people are hurting, especially if you're in those wellness professions. And that can be challenging, right? When there's so much going on in the world, and that can also lead to burnout. So I'm hoping that what I share here today will also help you keep that connection to healing, inspiration, even sometimes, and drive to move forward. The energy, the vibe. So my hope is that, and I'm going to tell you that story again in a second, that this session will give you some mental clarity so you know how to help people right in the middle of a trigger, ideas for how to provide and receive emotional support in the moment, and inspiration to continue in the direction of healing. So my friend Elena reached out to me, and this was right in the midst of some big political changes in the US, which we're in the middle of still. And she was sharing that she was feeling really triggered. We do this little video chat back and forth. And so she shared a story about how she felt super triggered and was really feeling fearful, feeling angry, and went to therapy. She has this amazing therapist. She lives on the East Coast. And after, she sent me another video and she's like, that was so helpful because I realized that what's going on in the world is hitting this nerve in me. And the nerve relates to things that happened so long ago that I don't even really think about them anymore, but they're still there. And I'm reacting as if those things are still happening in the moment. And I was like, ding, 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 ding. You're triggered, right? It hit a nerve. Something came up from the past. And she had this beautiful place to go to work with her therapist to understand that it's not always about the mom as a new mom, but something was reminding her of her relationship with her mom. She was able to connect with her mom. She was able to express a need, and she was able to shift even her dynamic with her mom because she was triggered by something that wasn't even related to her mom, that was related to politics and changes in the US. So I found some hope in that, right? And I want to share that hope with you today. And I also want to share the hope that I have that something from today will stick, right? Usually we take these trainings or webinars and we're in there and, there's a lot of information. I'm classic, like fire hose of information. And there's good things about that. But I just think there's going to be something that sticks with you today that resonates, that you can carry with you, that you'll have in your pocket, that'll come back into your mind in the right moment. And that's my hope, to just continue to support you in your healing journey, to support you as you're supporting others. Some of you know me and quite well. My name is Lisa Danylchuk. My last name's Ukrainian, so shout out to everyone in Ukraine. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm an experienced registered yoga teacher. I'm a certified yoga therapist, and I'm certified to provide continuing education. I also founded the Center for Yoga and Trauma Recovery. I've written 3 books. You can see some of them, and some cute kids' toys over my shoulder. Yoga for Trauma Recovery is my most recent book. It's also available on Audible if you like to listen. I was president of the ISSTD in 2002, the year I got pregnant with my daughter. I also graduated from Harvard, the Graduate School of Education there, and UCLA. So special shout out. I didn't see anyone dropping LA in the chat, and I kind of doubt it. I think there's so much going on with the fires there right now that this isn't the place, right? Like, it's immediate response at this moment. So if you have a heart connection to LA is here. Sarah, love, so much love to you. So much love to you. Like, I want to cry, but that's not going to help us right now. I'll take a breath and I'll keep feeling my feelings. Yes, Andrea, so much love to LA. I used to live right on, I've been zooming in on the map, like right on the corner of the evacuation zone. So I've been like, is Bundy Drive evacuated yet? And as far as I can tell, I think parts of it are, parts of it aren't. Anyhow, so much love to all of you in the LA area. I could say so much more about that. But hopefully, in love to UCLA. Yeah, I'm going to shout out to my Go Bruins. I hope your air quality improves. I hope your firefighters are well sustained. And I hope that things improve quickly here. All right. So, why do we do trauma work? Why do we do trauma work? A lot of you on this call do it. So you might relate to some of this. Every day, I just see something that relates to a trauma and someone who's needing support. And our communities and our planet itself have such a clear need for healing. We get more evidence of this every day, it seems. And I'd really love to contribute to a safer and more joyful life for my daughter and for all future generations. We love being outside. We love connecting with people. We love sharing joyful moments. Those are all possible, even after trauma. But right, the more we're able to deal with trauma, the less we get stuck. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here. Yay, love received. Awesome, Sarah. Here's what we'll cover today. I'm going to talk about what a trigger is and what it isn't. As I've seen this work get more popular, get more, I don't know, likes and shares on social media, I see sometimes things that I'm like, I don't know if that's how I would think about it, or it seems a little general, or it seems like we're not agreeing on definitions here. So I always like to get really specific. What are we talking about? What are we not talking about? And then I'll talk about how to spot triggers, why this is super key in a long-term growth and healing process. I'm going to share ways to care for someone when a trigger takes over. This is probably going to apply to you for yourself and to people you work with. Okay. So I'm going to encourage you to think about helping someone else for today. Just because the purpose of this training, again, I can't see you. We're not doing one-on-one. We're not trying to work through your intense, deepest trauma, but we're all self-reflecting, right? And that's a good thing. So you're probably going to think about some things for yourself too. Also going to share some simple practices you can use to recenter, ground, and grow beyond trauma. Then I'm going to share how I'm celebrating 10 years of my online training program. So I've been hosting Yoga for Trauma online training program since 2015, and I'm super excited to celebrate that decade anniversary this year. So I'm going to share some ways that you can join me. And then I'm going to give away a copy of my book, Yoga for Trauma Recovery. Okay, so stick around till the end if you can for your chance to get a free copy of my book shipped to you. I have a comment about the cat in the picture in a moment, but why is this important? Okay, we're reckoning with the history of trauma in the US and around the world. There's new social and climate catastrophes. They just seem to continue. I think there's folks from here in Australia too, right? And you've been through this too in that area with massive fires and climate catastrophes. So these are impacting us and having a strong impact on how we deal with other things as well. Pretty much everyone has friends or family or themselves that are going through it. I can think of 6 people off the top of my head who've lost their house to a climate-related disaster in the last few months. Okay, so as wellness professionals, the more confident we are with these tools, the more we can share them with those around us, and the less burnout we'll experience. There's a lot that goes into burnout, but this is one of the things, right? Having the tools, having the confidence, having community. Oh, you amazing people. So I want to make a note, right? This little cat graphic, I just think it's adorable. I'm intentionally using light graphics and things that are maybe a little bit funny throughout this presentation. Now, that's not because I don't take trauma seriously. I absolutely do. It's because I don't want to share this information with you in a way that continues triggers, right? In a way that, like, I'm not going to show images of catastrophe. I'm not going to use the harshest examples. I'm going to use kind of light, funny examples that might be a little more everyday to demonstrate and teach the dynamics we're talking about. Okay. Because I don't want you to walk away with this with more trauma to carry. Thank you. Yeah. I think it is a trauma-informed approach, right? So this might include Care Bears. And I will say at some point, we're all trying not to trigger each other. I don't know if your trigger is Care Bears, so I apologize if your trigger is Care Bears, but I'm really trying to use things that are not associated with harm and violence, right? Okay, so that's intentional. If you're like, why are there rainbows here? That's why, right? And I want to share a deep belief that I have, which is that healing is possible. I truly deeply believe this. I've seen it in so many ways. I've seen it in so many forms and iterations. I believe it's possible to heal from trauma and post-traumatic stress. I believe it's possible to experience safety even with a history of really not experiencing much or any at all. And I believe that it's possible, accessible to experience awe and joy and play and celebration of life, even when people have been really depressed, really impacted through all the ways our nervous system responds to trauma. And this is a picture my mom actually took of me when we were on a road trip across the country. You know, I didn't even think about this till now, but I'll share it. This is a trip that we took on the anniversary of the day my brother died, right? And I didn't even think about that until I just was like, oh, when was that? It could have been a sad, like, oh, this is it was such a meaningful trip. It was such a beautiful experience. And I just put that together looking at that. So thank you for having me, for being here and helping me host this workshop to put that together. Joy, expansion, connection to the planet, connection to each other, awe, celebration, all those things are possible, even when things happen that suck. Yeah. So let's resource together because we are talking about trauma. I have a picture of a little plant and some sunlight here. I'm going to invite you to take a moment to ground your body in any way that serves you. Right? I like to feel my feet. You might like some other part of your body, or you might like to use your vision instead. But let's take a moment to ground, center ourselves, to call our attention towards our own center, away from other things that might be pulling it. And if it serves you, just to take an easy breath. And then attuning to your environment. I always look out the window and there's this beautiful lemon tree there, and I see these bright yellow lemons, and I just, something about that makes me happy. So can you look in your environment and see if there's something that feels either neutral, just like, oh, I don't really feel much about that. Maybe it's a cool temperature or a warm temperature. And if you do have something that's like, ah, that kind of lifts me up, that kind of brings me joy. I love the lemons out the window. That's just an example for me. Just take a moment to identify one simple thing, neutral or positive, and to take this moment to connect with that thing, right? To notice how it looks, maybe what it smells like, what it feels like, depending on what sense you're using. You can use any sense here. And just to identify it, right? To name it. It's here, it's in our environment right now. We can keep coming back to this throughout our time together today. If you need a moment of reset, if you want a reminder that hopefully you're in a safe and comfortable place right now, you can connect with this resource. All right. So choose something neutral or positive in your immediate environment that you can come back to. That's my invitation to you. We'll take a breath with that thing before we move into really the bulk of this conversation, right? What is a trigger? What is it? It's come to mean so many things. It's come to be common language. And it's funny because when you look at this picture I chose here, it probably looks, it's a resource to me, but there's also a trigger in it. And I'll explain in a moment. Trigger is typically a harmful or potentially harmful experience that's happened, and then something specific reminds you of it. And your mind, brain, and body respond to the original threat as if it's happening right now in the moment. Okay. So here's the story. This picture I actually took the other day on a trail I love nearby. This is Lake Chabot in the San Francisco Bay Area, East Bay. And a couple months ago, when it was still warm out, it's probably October, I was hiking up the other side of this hill, and never seen one there before, but there was a little baby, like junior rattlesnake curled up in the middle of the trail. And I like jumped back and did like a full-on surprise move. It's like a Moro reflex in babies, if you've seen that. I did that, and UPS is here. The dogs are singing to you. So I jumped back and I got all barky inside. My whole body was like, that was really well timed, dogs. Thank you. And then I took a moment and I was like, okay, snake's kind of small. It's not really moving fast. Seems to be going that way. At a certain point, I'm going to skedaddle around. I actually thought about stopping or going back because I was like, I don't want to mess. Like, I'm not trying to get bit on my hike today. And I was like, I think I can safely go around the side. And then I know, so I did. I went around the side and, it stayed. It didn't respond to me. And I just like quick, got so much energy in my body. I moved forward quickly. So then I'm like, feeling the adrenaline, feeling the response of that, hiking up the trail super fast. Like, I'm going to get a personal record getting to the top of this hill. And I was telling other people as I was going, hey, heads up, like I saw a snake. Hey, biker, heads up. I saw a snake in the middle of the trail. Like, also don't run it over. Like, actually care for this thing that I'm also scared of. So that happened. And then I go down. I like to hike up the mountain, down the other side, and then back up and back if I have time. Right. So this day I had time, went up and down. I was on the other side of the mountain coming up. And all of a sudden, before I could even think of it, I was hands up, jumping back. And I'm telling you, I was like a basketball player and a football player at the same time. Basketball guards, how like their hands are out to the side, and football, how they do that really fast foot move. It was just this split second. I jumped back, my hands went up, my feet went really fast. And I looked ahead on the trail. And can you guess what was there? It was not a snake. It was a stick. And this is such a classic example when we talk about trauma and triggers. And it was like happening to me on the trail. So I'm having this whole like sort of laughing at myself, observing myself, taking notes on myself experience as we go too. So it was a stick with its head up, right? So if you look at this picture, and I don't know if you can see my arrow that I'm pointing to, but if you go kind of down from the sun and then down to the ground on the trail and then over to the right, there's a stick with its quote unquote head up. This isn't the stick in the moment, but this is really close to the spot where it happened. So in this picture, there's a trigger, right? But you wouldn't necessarily think it. Triggers can be anything. They can be a stick on the ground. And the point of this story is I saw a snake, which, is potentially a rattlesnake, potentially harmful. You don't want to get close to it. And then I saw a stick that reminded me. And before I could even think, my whole body, and even as I explain it, I can get like a 1% flavor of that, like that adrenaline, right? My whole body responded as if it was happening, as if there was the threat that was imminent and I needed to get to safety. It sent a ton of energy to my arms and legs, right? I was like, oh. And then I sort of took a breath, realized that the second one was just a stick and not a snake, and kept hiking and was noticing, oh, I still got some energy from that. Actually, not as much as the original snake, but still a lot of energy before my brain recognized safety. Okay. So there's a lot in that story that we'll continue to unpack. What does it mean to be triggered? So there's a sight, the stick, maybe a smell, a touch, a sound, even a taste that reminds our bodies and activates a memory of something traumatic happening. So it could be any association. It doesn't even have to be the harmful thing itself, right? So it doesn't have to be, I was afraid of a snake and I saw a snake again. It could be I was afraid of a snake and I saw a stick. It could be something that's reminiscent. It could be something connected that was happening while something harmful was also happening as well. And then intense emotions tend to arise. We can have all the feels. It can be, usually it's a fight, flight, freeze kind of thing, right? But we can have all kinds of emotions associated with that trigger and with that experience, depending on the flavors of the experience. Super important here. Our bodies respond to the initial threat and to the intense emotions that are associated with them. So if the initial threat also brought about a sense of shame, well, then we're not just feeling the threat, feeling the shame. We're probably also feeling feelings about feeling the threat and feeling the shame. Yeah, you see how it starts to get really complex and layered. And it could be any of these emotions. Our current reaction is rooted in the past experience. So sometimes if we're in a social setting or if there's more than one person involved, people might be like, whoa, like we're responding to this really differently. That's one way we can start to sniff out like, oh, why are we responding to this differently? And two people can be triggered at once for different reasons and for different things. So that makes it, again, lots of complexity to unravel, right? So I want to make a note here that I'm saying intense emotions and body reactions arise, right? Distancing, numbing, and dissociation are all really common here as well. And they're kind of like the quiet kid in the classroom. I used to do a lot of classroom-based prevention and support and intervention. And we would always go, okay, who's acting out? Who's throwing pens at the board? Who's really quiet? Like, who does no one notice? Who never talks? Right? Yeah, fawning too. Exactly. We can also fawn in a social situation and kind of bend over backwards to please other people, totally lose a connection to ourselves, right? And so that's where when we look at all these emotions, even just this, pretty small grid of faces that you see on the screen, it can be any kind of different reaction that can show up. Distancing, numbing, dissociation, maybe fawning too, can end up being that, like a quiet kid where we're like, oh, everything's fine because I don't see anything. Everything's fine because they're being super social, right? So it doesn't necessarily look like anger, sadness, rage, distress, overwhelm. If someone's showing up as confident and collected, you might not think they're triggered. Or if someone's showing up as just sort of sitting back, or if they're totally disconnecting or in some kind of free state, again, quiet kid in the classroom. So we want to be aware of that. Okay. And not just think, oh, intense emotions, I'm only triggered if I'm scared. I'm only triggered if I'm running. There's lots of ways this can show up, right? So I can't remember when I first heard this term a few decades ago, the trauma vortex. A lot of times we'll talk about the power of once there's a trigger or once there's a trauma, there's this powerful energy that feels like it kind of sucks us away, right? So this memory or this trigger can be so powerful that it can whisk us out of the moment and into a spiral of emotions or a cascade of responses. Okay, here's your funny graphic. Like you're just down the toilet and you didn't even know what happened. Okay. So this is fueled by a super deep response in our brain. It's not typically not something we're like, oh, I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to run. I think, right? Think about when I saw the stick on the trail, I was doing football and basketball at the same time. I wasn't like, hey, I think I should use those moves. No, it's just a deep brain response and choice. So you might feel in the trauma vortex that emotions are overwhelming, that they're difficult to regulate, they're difficult to connect to. And you also might feel like this is totally what's happening right now. And that we start to talk about, we're not going to go too far into this, but like enactments, right? When we're enacting our whole experience of trauma, it just feels like it's so real that it really is happening now. And another thing I'll point out is that we can build entire social circles around shared triggers. There's an amazing emotional support element to this, but it can get a little scary when we're sharing realities, right? That are based on trauma and based on triggers. So on the flip side, we can explore a healing vortex and just get a sense of what does that look like? What does that feel like, right? We started the beginning of this training with finding a specific resource, the lemons out my window, something that makes you take a breath, feel connected to the present. And I'll invite you just to find that thing that you identified earlier and connect with it again. I don't know why, but I'm also really loving, maybe because it's cold and my hands are cold. I'm loving the like warm tea on my hands too. Warm teacup. That's a nice one. So in a healing vortex, we tend to feel a little more open, curious, mentally, emotionally, aware of the emotions we're feeling. So it's not like, oh, I'm only feeling happiness, although the graphic I have might might go contrary to that. It's not that we're only feeling happiness, but we're aware of our emotions. We're able to process them. We're able to express. We're able to process. We're able to navigate them. We're also super importantly available to identify our needs and meet them through our mind, a mental choice, through our brain, through our body, through the environment, and typically able to feel some sense of relief. Like even if we're super sad, like, okay, moving through that. And able to connect with ourselves, that's feeling what we're feeling, able to connect with others in a wider range of emotions. So what can sometimes happen when we're triggered is we're only feeling what's related to the trauma, and we're not maybe feeling a wide range of reaction to what's happening in the present. So healing vortex, this is my image that I'm associating with it today. It's a unicorn sliding down a rainbow and landing on a cloud and laughing. So yeah, it's not just happiness, but healing vortex tends to be a happier place to be because we can cope with life, right? And we can deal with what's in front of us. So let's talk about what being triggered is not. Being triggered is not feeling something in response to what's happening right now. So when I saw the snake and I was going up the trail and I jumped back, that was the potential trauma, right? That was the scary thing that happened. I was responding to what was happening right now. The trigger was later on the trail when I saw the stick that looked like it had its head up, but it was just a stick. The trigger is also not being upset. So it's actually normal and healthy to get angry. Repeat after me, please. It is normal and healthy to get angry. Like, that's part of having a nervous system. If someone comes into a coffee shop and steps on your foot out of nowhere, I'm guessing most people are going to feel upset about that. They're going to feel angry. Hey, why are you stepping on my foot? What are you doing? Don't step on my foot. That's appropriate, right? Because in my humble opinion, people should not walk into coffee shops and step on other people's feet. That is harmful. That is violent. No. So it's our responsibility, though, with that anger to channel it, right? Like if someone steps on your foot in a coffee shop and you unload all the rage of the world on them, maybe not so much. But if you say, hey, no, don't do that. Get away. Other people, what's going on? Let's get this person out of the coffee shop before they step on somebody else's foot. Appropriate response. Yeah. Maybe journal about it later. You talk to your friends about it, right? Now, a trigger is also not repeatedly being upset. So here's an example that's really common in relationships. You always load the dishwasher so randomly. Why don't you order? Why don't you do it in order? Okay, we could go down a whole rabbit hole of why people want the dishwasher in order, but some people maybe just are a little more organized. There's a lot of neurodiversity here. So let's just say someone prefers that for no particular reason. It's just how they're wired. And then their relationship partner's always like, oh, that's so annoying. Okay, this happens every day. And every day I'm getting so much more upset about that. Not necessarily a trigger. Now, how could that same thing be a trigger? When someone says, you remind me of how critical my parents were when you tell me how to load the dishwasher, right? So what is the difference? The difference is connection to a past event. Okay. So normal to have emotions, normal to feel responses to what's happening in the moment. That doesn't mean we're triggered. Normal to feel frustrations that build when they're repeated. Normal to be angry and upset. None of those necessarily mean we're triggered. They can if they relate to something earlier, and specifically if they relate to something traumatic. Okay, so how do we spot when we're triggered? The golden question. How do we see it? Typically, there's a strong emotion or response that's arising beyond what's needed to address what's happening in the moment. So our bodies are super smart. Sometimes they over or underdo things, but typically when there's something in the environment that's stressful, our body is really trying to help us get through that. It's trying to help us address it. It's trying to help us move through, right? So if a strong emotion is showing up, and it might be showing up in your, we all feel things differently, right? It might be showing up in your body. It might be showing up in your muscle tension, but something is showing up beyond what's needed to address what's happening in the moment. That's a sign there might be something from the past getting triggered. Often these things can get in the way of problem solving and resolving the current situation. So I'm just trying to think of an example now. Yeah, let's just say you're climbing a mountain and you get to a kind of a sketchy spot and you have a fear of heights because of a trauma that you went through earlier in life, right? Maybe there's actually enough space for you to walk and it's safe and you could be okay. But because of what happened before, it's feeling really difficult to resolve and move forward. I'm listening because Isabella's crying. She's with her daddy. You can bring her in if you need to, my love. Okay. We might need a baby hug, a little soothing moment. So how do we feel a trigger somatically? That's going to depend, right? That's going to depend on usually the deep brain response. Is it fight, flight, freeze, fawn? Are you shutting down? Are you activated? That's like a whole other training to go through the whole cascade of responses. But typically we start with like a softer freeze. Then we go through more activation if that's not working. And if that activation isn't working, we'll start to flag. We'll maybe start to fawn. And if that's not working, we'll usually go into a deeper collapse, freeze, shutdown. So any of that kind of energy in your body is a good indicator. And also often with stress, there's some kind of physical tension, and that tension can relate to what was happening in your body, what your body wanted or needed to do to try to keep you safe in that original trauma. So I hope that answers your question. It can be very difficult to tame the thoughts and feelings or resolve emotions quickly, right? When we're triggered, it's not like we're like, oh, okay, let me just take a moment. This is what's happening. This is the issue. Let me get some ideas of how to solve it, right? It can feel like very overwhelming and too much to deal with. So I always encourage folks to ask themselves, and I ask myself this, like, am I just spinning around feeling the same feeling? Or does the feeling have an arc to it? Am I processing it? Is it changing and evolving? And oftentimes when we're just spinning around in the same emotion, that can be a subconscious trigger. There's something else related that we're just not seeing, we're not connecting to yet. And sometimes there's natural timing to these things. Like dissociation happens for a reason. Sometimes it's healthy or helpful for us to not know what we know. And in time, building safety can help us move through that and connect. Another great indicator is, are you able to connect with people? Now, someone mentioned fawning. That's maybe different than a deep, authentic sharing of how you're feeling, right? A back and forth. So are you able to have like a back and forth connection with people or animals? I'm going to add. And what's the basis for this connection? Is the basis just maybe the anger you feel because of the trigger or the sadness you feel because of the trigger? Again, great to connect with folks who can empathize and share. But is there some other context? Because if we connect with someone just based on the trigger, we can spin together and we can dance for years. Right. And I think some of you have seen this and know that. So the hardest part, I would say, of moving through triggers, we're going to keep talking about this, is building that awareness. It's just knowing that we're triggered. Sometimes once we know we're triggered, yeah, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of challenge in navigating that. But I would say the most impactful triggers, the most harmful even, are when we're not even aware that it's happening. So building that awareness, self-reflecting, building relationships, bringing that curiosity. Why is my experience different? What is coming up for me in the moment? Maybe I can take this to therapy. All of that definitely helps. Okay, here's your Care Bear warning. So what can we do once we know there's a trigger? We can care for the trigger. All right. We're not trying to suppress it. We're not trying to extinguish the trauma response. We're trying to understand, connect, and care. So when you identify a trigger, surround it with super bionic cupcake Care Bears with trophies on their bellies and sunshine. But care is actually an acronym, right? Can we surround the trigger and our response with compassion? Right? Tenet of self-compassion is to talk to yourself just like you would talk to a loved one. Can we surround this trigger with acceptance? This is what's happening right now. This is how it is right now. I'm super pissed off. I'm shutting down. I don't know why this is happening. I'm confused. I feel icky. It's how I'm feeling. It's what's happening. It's how it is right now. Then can we shift to responsiveness? What's the emotion? What's the response asking for? How can I meet that need? Maybe the response is asking for time alone. Maybe it's asking for movement. Maybe it's asking for connection. Maybe it's asking for a feeling of safety, right? How can I meet that need in this moment? Talk a little more about that. And then expression. How can I express or process this emotion without harming myself or others, right? So in the very small example I gave of someone coming in and stepping on someone's foot, how could someone respond? By getting help from other people in the coffee shop, right? My daughter's being super expressive as we're talking about expression. Can you guys hear her? I can hear it. I don't know if it's just mama brain or if it's super microphone. I think it's probably both. So resourcing is identifying what you need, participating in, imagining, writing about, moving your body in a way that meets that need. So finding any angle that's going to help meet that need. Bonus here, we can connect the sense that was triggered with the resource. Now, there's always reasons to do the opposite, use a different resource, right? Like, so what I mean by this, in the example of me seeing the stick, using sight to resource, right? Looking around, noticing I'm safe can be really helpful. If it's a smell that's triggering, say the smell of someone's cologne or something that reminds you of someone that has done harm, well, maybe you can use smelling salts, so to speak, like eucalyptus, lavender, essential oils, or something that is positive to you, right? Something that feels like, oh, I love that smell. So we can use the sense that was triggered and communicate with our bodies at that same level. And we can use any and all senses, whatever feels like it's going to be most helpful. Also want to speak to glimmers here. Oh my God, I have a glimmer right now. Hi, Alex and Isabella on the porch with the lemon tree behind them. My daughter's so adorable. Oh my goodness. Do you all feel this way? I know some of you have kids too. She's like the most precious. Okay. I'm back on task, Lisa. I love her so much. That's a glimmer. So a glimmer is a small yet powerful moment when something feels good or safe or hopeful or positive in any way. It can be a subtle experience. Like I'm talking about lemons on a tree here, guys, right? Like they're just sitting there being yellow, and sometimes they have rain on them and sometimes they have sun on them. And I just find it nice. Okay. So it reminds us that it's possible to feel maybe neutral, to feel okay, to feel good. It also connects us to the present moment. Those lemons are out there right now. Yeah. So examples might be lemons on a lemon tree, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, a smile from a stranger, your kids saying hi out the window, the sun shining on the water. Okay, I love using sun shining on the water because one, that is a glimmer for me. When I see those sparkles of sunshine against the water, it's like one of my happiest moments. And I often just sit and watch it. Sometimes I take a video for later. Here's a little moment of that sparkle on the water feeling. Maybe you feel that too. Glimmers remind us that healing isn't just about working through tough emotions and pain. It's also about finding moments of light along the way, connecting with those, feeling those, bringing them into our body, bringing them into our heart, bringing them into our life and our experience. So how do we help someone across this bridge? Right? We've talked about the trauma vortex. We've talked about the healing vortex. We've talked about resourcing and triggers. We're starting with a trigger, building awareness that, okay, there's something coming up right now. There's something happening in our body. There's some reaction that's not just about right now, but is also about something historical. Let's come into the present moment. Let's resource. And then by meeting that need, by resourcing, by connecting with glimmers, we're going in the direction of healing. Yeah. So when I think of helping someone across the bridge, kind of like be in a taxi or a Lyft or an Uber or all the different ones that exist around the world, right? Or maybe holding someone's hand as you're walking or biking across the bridge. But there's this crossing from one land of where things just keep feeling worse and worse in the trauma vortex to the other side where it doesn't just mean things all feel great, but we're able to connect with, probably make some sense of, and make some choices to help us resource and feel more grounded. And this is really a rinse repeat situation because we talk about neural pathways in the brain. They start as a footpath and become a trail and become a wider road, and then it's paved, and then it becomes a information superhighway in our brain. Repeating this over and over again is super helpful. And I know sometimes we feel like, why am I not healed yet? I already was aware of that trigger 3 months ago. How come it's still happening now? It's happening now so we can keep repaving, we can keep crossing the bridge, we can strengthen that neural pathway that connects us with healing, or those neural pathways, I should say. So why, Lisa, would you say it's good to be triggered? Why would you say that? I think of a trigger as a map. It shows us precisely where we still feel wounded. That nerve, right? That my friend Elena was talking about. That nerve that got hit, that wound that maybe hasn't healed, that maybe needs a fresh Band-Aid and needs some more care. It shows us precisely where we still feel hurt, where we still feel impacted by things that happened in the past. And it gives us a map to go in, if we have the resources, if we have these tools, to heal that and to have different reactions and experiences moving forward. And that's pretty powerful, right? We can change what we feel in the future by addressing what's happening in the moment, by being aware of our trauma and our triggers. Without that awareness, you might end up hanging out in the trauma vortex side of the bridge and just re-experiencing, right? That's a really big word in trauma diagnosis, re-experiencing. But with this awareness, we recognize we have the power, we can make choices, and we can cross that bridge. We can get help crossing that bridge. Typically, it's helpful to have someone to cross the bridge with, but we can do it on our own as well. And sometimes there might be moments where we want to do this on our own. And when I think about getting to the other side of that bridge, a phrase that always comes to my mind is grounding into good. grounding into goodness, right? Connecting with literally the fact that we are on a planet where there are so many balances of oxygen and chemicals and elements in our bodies. We're stardust, we're dirt, like it's all coming together. I like to go there in my mind. That gives me a sense of awe, like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. We can practice seeing glimmers in our environment to connect with a sense of goodness or feeling supported or feeling like we're in that healing vortex. We can build resourcing practices of safety, peacefulness, whatever the primary need is, to continue to ground into good. And we can repeat this so our brain gets used to identifying that what we need, when we need it, and how we can get those needs met. All right. So over time, we're smoothing out this transition from being triggered, being upset by something that's related to a trauma in the past, or even just being upset, to getting grounded, getting centered, and getting connected in the present moment. So let's recap. We want to spot the trigger, identify the emotion, the response in the body, and the need. Take a conscious step out of the trauma vortex toward the healing vortex, using resourcing, meeting that need through action or imagination. EMDR is really good for this. Boomy agrees. Boomy's a very barky boy. Practicing connecting with glimmers. He's also very snuggly, but maybe I'll open the door and let him in. He's a big, big bear of a dog. Walking across that bridge is much easier with support, right? There are going to be moments and exceptions. But in general, when we can get support, it goes a little more smoothly. And then someone else can help us be like, hey, friend, are you triggered right now? I love you. Right? I always remember a friend telling me about a story where her friend got triggered and she was like, hey, you sound super triggered right now. And the friend was like, really? Yeah, huh? And just like a beautiful moment of awareness, like, oh, right, I am. This isn't just about what just happened. This is about so much more than that. Let's unpack. So we covered so much. We covered what a trigger is, what it isn't. We covered how to spot triggers, why that's key in the healing process. I needed this today. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad, Michelle. This is helpful. Ways to care for someone when a trigger takes over, ways to care for yourself, ways to support other folks. Simple practices you can use to recenter, ground, and grow beyond trauma. And now I'm going to talk about how I'm celebrating Y4T this year, 10 years, and how you can join me. And I'll move on to the book giveaway as well. So we're doing well on time. I'm super proud of myself. I'm just going to little pound the back. We got 14 minutes to wrap up. And then it's Isabella's nap time. So many stories that could go there, but no time for that right now. So Y4T is celebrating 10 years this year. I'm really amazed, perplexed, like time is so weird. It feels like it's been there forever, but I can't believe it's been 10 years already. This program started in 2015. It was the very first. You're so welcome, Sarah. Sending you so much love. So it was the very first program. When you would go online and search yoga trauma online training program in 2015, my program was the only one that came up. And I'm really proud of that because this was a big goal I had in my heart for a long time. And I'm very grateful that I, brought it to life and made it happen. That's been around for 10 years. Is this amazing community that's been through this program, over 500 students in 40 plus countries. As you can see, the group here is also very diverse around the world, international. I'm a big traveler too. I love connecting with people around the world and exploring and just being in different cultures and the way that can open up and shift our mindset. So this very proud of the international community that's here. So here's how I'm celebrating. It's one of my favorite emojis. I'm just doing a rebrand. I got a refresh. I haven't done a lot of branding, honestly, in my work. The content side has been so rich for so long that like the business side is new and sometimes I'm clunky with it. Even for today, I was like, I want to use a new slide background. And then I spent like an hour on Canva and I was like, this is hard. So I'm giving myself grace and space to take some time to find a brand and images and all that stuff that really feels like it connects with it because we outgrow and we keep going. Thank you. Thank you for the congratulations. So I'm also creating a whole new program from Y4T. I'm going to take all the core awesomeness of it, all the great ideas from students like some of you in here across the world, and create a whole new program. So you have the opportunity to join me in that process if you feel inspired to. So to be a part of the new program, You can join me starting this month and get instant access to the program as it exists today, the 8-week online training program and certification. I'm going to tell you something I heard from a student in Brazil yesterday in a moment, just to give you a sense of what's in here, because I don't think I always give it credit. A lot of times I'll teach a webinar, I'll be like, oh, I have this program. It's nice. Like, it's really powerful. And I'm learning how to express that better. So you have the option to join me starting January 27th for 8 live weekly bonus trainings, in addition to the 8 modules. I am going to practice new things that I'm adding, just like we're doing today, right? This is something that isn't in the program, really identifying and breaking down the triggers and the bridge. It's not something there. It's something I've thought about for a long time, something I wanted to add. So what I'm doing is doing live trainings like this for 8 weeks, where you're going to get the benefit of what's going to be in the new program. Okay. And then you'll get live Q&A with me at the end as well. So that starts on January 27th. I'm really excited for it because honestly, the thing I love the most is the connection, right? I know we're all in different places all around the world, different time zones, different experiences, but that's what lights me up and that's what keeps me coming back for decades. So I'm here for it. And I hope you are too. And for those of you who don't know the program, some of you have been through it. I see you here. The first week we talk about foundations of health. When the program first started in 2015, it was 6 weeks. And then I quickly realized I started week 1 with trauma and I was like, we're starting our run uphill. And I was like, why are we starting our run uphill? Let's warm up. Let's run downhill first. So we're starting with foundations of health. The program's been through iterations over time, right? This foundation is super important for exactly what we're talking about today. We can get lost in the trauma vortex. Let's not do that together. We're going to get rooted in health before we move into understanding trauma, before we move into understanding the nervous system, how our nervous system reacts and responds, and all the ways somatically our body's impacted. We touched upon that today through a question, yeah? From there, we move into fundamentals of yoga philosophy and practice. I always think of my life like 2 railroad tracks of like mental health and like yoga movement processing studies and work and experiences. And every time I would take a new training, it would be another little connector, another little bridge across, another little bridge across, right? So they're parallel and they're connected. This week, week 4, I really spell out how these 2 things, trauma theory and yoga philosophy and practice, are similar, are same, but different, as they say in Thailand, and how we can just use different language to express and even, yeah, sometimes like convince people in systems or funders, like this is legit and this is helpful. Here's why. So as we go through the program, that'll get clearer and clearer. Week 5, we talk about principles of trauma-informed yoga. So if you're offering groups or classes, things to consider. Week 6, I call advanced principles. We talk about dissociation, we talk about shame, we talk about hard stuff. And then we go through a research review. We've got tons of randomized control trials on yoga now. We didn't have that, 15 years ago, but we have it now. And then week 8 is a practicum. So week 8 also got added a few years in, where people were finishing the program and going like, oh, what now? How do I bring this into practice? So week 8 practicum, really approachable way to bite off the next bite and chew it and keep moving forward with what you want to offer to the world, to your communities. So this program is for yogis, mental health professionals, counselors, therapists, teachers and wellness providers. We've had health practitioners come through, healing professionals come through. I would say the core group is mental health and yoga folks, but we have RNs and psychiatrists, and I guess that's mental health, doctors, lots of different healing professionals, Reiki practitioners, massage therapists. The other group that comes to this program and finds themselves here are what I call pro healers. These are people who have done so much work in their life and they're invested in learning and growing and also sharing, right? So if you're a pro healer, like you've done so much work on yourself and you're really into reading trauma books and learning more, this program might be for you. Now, I would say it's not for you if you're right in the thick of it and you don't feel like you have tools or skills in the moment and you're just looking for help through your own personal trauma. If it's just that and it's early, then I'm going to recommend getting support, right? Finding a therapist. I love the ISSTD website, find a therapist function for this, finding that personal support, getting some of that traction and stability feeling for yourself first before you focus on a lot of the, ingesting more information. Okay. So what happens after the program? Some of you are on here celebrating you. Students tend to use their certification to lead group therapy programs, to teach trauma-informed yoga to specialized populations like students, veterans, survivors, incarcerated populations. List goes on. People often bring trauma-informed somatic practices into their one-to-one work. That's something I do in my private practice. People often educate decision makers and access funding for their programs. So I used to work in juvenile justice programs, and there was these big MDTs, the multidisciplinary team meetings. And we would all sit down, and inevitably there was some person in leadership who would scoff at yoga, just not understand it, be like, who are these yoga people here? I don't get it. Through time and education, we helped shift that culture to where staff were asking for yoga for themselves because they understood that if they got it, it also helped the young people they were serving. They understood that it helped their feelings in their body, their relationships, all this stuff. So these, I want to say like perspectives, tools, understanding, when we can communicate them clearly, other people go, oh, that makes sense. I want to do this. And we can help support these healing programs. Often people also use this to deepen their self-care and their personal growth practices as well. Again, the focus is more on helping other folks, but we're all human. And we're all, like I used to say in grad school, divide the paper in half. Notes about yourself, notes about friends and family. Well, notes about yourself and friends and family on one side, notes about content on the other. So here's what some students say. Hillary in Italy calls this program a deep dive into trauma-informed teaching and the ways complex trauma and PTSD can show up. It's a wonderful blend of theory and practical advice. Thank you, Hillary. Are you here? Belinda says this is a very accessible program that provides you with tools you'll use for a lifetime, not just for your clients, but for you. And that's the most important part. If we aren't keeping ourselves regulated, it's very difficult to help others find self-regulation, right? Wisdom, Belinda, wisdom. And Tara, who took the very first training in 2015, says it's advanced but accessible. Lisa's personality brings light to the difficult yet important topic of trauma healing. She might be talking there about how I can use rainbow unicorn gifts to help explain something. It's something that's just part of my personality, honestly. Like my mom's a trauma therapist too, and she's very different. She will like say it like it is, very East Coast, like right in your face. And I'm just like, why? You do that. You do you. I'll do me. It's okay. I used to think, oh, I have to do it differently. And then I was like, actually, there's really a purpose here. So I just got this yesterday. This is Ruth from Brazil. She said, this program is transformative, especially for those who want to offer yoga in a more sensitive and inclusive way. It not only deepens the understanding of trauma and how it affects people, but it also teaches practical tools to create a safe and welcoming space. It's a unique opportunity to grow both as a professional and a human being. This was an incredible experience. It was very important for my individual healing process to look at myself and thus be able to offer appropriate support to those I serve. It opened my mind, my eyes. It made me reconsider many things and remember others. I am very grateful. And I'm very grateful for you, Ruth, and for the work you're doing in Brazil. Amazing, amazing human. This cohort is unique. We've got 8 live bonus sessions and trainings with yours truly. This is new content never seen before. And then 4 community calls where we'll just meet and talk and Q&A. Sometimes we get a little silly. It's a screenshot from one of them recently. Sometimes we make faces. Sometimes we tell jokes. It's not all rough and tough. Wow, the background in my Zoom is much more organized there. All right, so you have the opportunity to celebrate with me and get certified now, as soon as now. The 8-week online training program opens January 20th. Applications are open now. If you go to the website, it's howwecanheal.com/ the letter Y, the number 4, and the letter T. And I do have some early enrollment bonuses, and these are timely and for a reason. I know we've got an international community here, but next Monday in the US is Martin Luther King Jr. Day observed, and it's also Inauguration Day. And I know politics are quite the contentious thing in the US and can bring up a lot of emotions and feelings and triggers. So I'm hoping to provide some of these things to help us all ground into good, to help us all tame some triggers, to help us all orient in a direction of healing in this important time in our country and world. So if you apply and enroll this week, yes, Please, right? You'll get instant access and you can start getting your certification right now. You'll also get a week to warm up with me next week. So this week, once you enroll, get you started on your reading. You'll get a PDF of the book right away. You'll get the book shipped out to you. Also get started with the audio book, which I can send you the files to download. Then you'll get the live support for you next Monday and Wednesday. Again, grounding into good, getting us taken care of so we can take care of other folks. The first workshop is called Taming Triggers. Basically taking this workshop and walking you through a process of what's coming up, how can I meet the need, where do I go with it? We'll do a little bit of movement and breath. We're going to focus also on intention and visualization in this training. So some journaling and reflection. Then on Wednesday, we have more of a movement yoga practice called Grounding into Good, where we'll practice some shapes and some asana and some pranayama, so movement and breath that can serve us to ground into good, to connect with that healing and to stay strong in it for days, months, years, and come back to it every time we need to, right? So anyone who joins will also get, for this early enrollment bonus, forever replay access to all the live sessions that we're recording. So you'll have access to the program, get certified, and you'll have forever access to the live sessions that we're recording starting January 27th. Support groups on Monday, Wednesday will be same time as this, noon Pacific. Okay. And they'll be recorded. And you'll have access to those too. Yeah, you're welcome. So I hope you'll join me next week. Taming Triggers is the journal and reflection practice. So if you're feeling upset or triggered, I'm going to walk you through the practice. I already kind of told you this, but it's just based on what Belinda said earlier, right? If we're not supporting ourselves, how are we going to support others? And then grounding into good. We're going to connect with resources, glimmers, and the earth beneath your feet, a grounding yoga practice. We're going to use movement, breath, and some mantra to connect to a vision of healing, help our bodies feel safe and supported. So if you're feeling a little like, ooh, this sounds good, this is something I've been wanting to do, or this is something I really want to do, I'm going to invite you to apply to join. Go to howwecanheal.com/Y4T. Submit your application today. I just had this like insight right before I hopped on. I was like, you know what? If anyone submits their application today, I'm going to also offer them a free one-to-one session, like a 30-minute check-in, grounding into good, consultation. Use it as you will. So if you submit your application today, you'll be up for that too. And I see someone in the chat who just joined, so I'm going to give that to you too. You know who you are. All right, so you can enroll here, howwecanheal.com/Y4T. If you stick around till the end, I'll drop it in the chat so you can link straight over there. And it's time for a giveaway. Are you ready? These are my 3 books. Somebody asked about books I recommend. Obviously recommend mine because like I really stand behind them. And I'll have a think about other things that are speaking to me right now. A lot of those books are in my office, so I can't hold them up to show you. But Embodied Healing is my first book in 2015. How You Can Heal is more, it's all focused on resources. And Yoga for Trauma Recovery is the book that goes with the program. It came out in 2019 with a foreword by Patricia Walden. And probably in the next few years, we'll have a second edition coming. So let's go back here. Here's how we're going to do it. I'm picking a number. And if you want to put your name in to win the book, go ahead and write just your first name in the chat. And then once I pick the winner, since everybody can't see the chat, we'll just have you put your address so I can ship it out to you right away. And I'm going to give it a minute for everyone to put their names. Hi, everybody. DE, is that Delaware? Nice. Awesome. Hey, hey, hey. Oh, sweet. Delaware in the house. All right. Magic number is, what, there's still more coming in? Oh, dear. All right, here we go. We have a winner in 3, 2, Sarah Strawn. Sarah Strawn, are you the one in LA? Are you the one in LA? Oh my goodness. Sarah, you win a copy of Yoga for Trauma Recovery, Theory, Philosophy, and Practice. So since no one else can see the chat, you can just put your address in the chat, or you can also, if you want to, email me, lisa@howwecanheal.com. You applied last week. Does that count for your offer? Yeah, totally. Anyone who applies this month, it applies to. So for sure, for sure, for sure. And I feel like I missed a question earlier. There was a question about books. So yay, congratulations, Sarah. And can we all just for a moment, you couldn't access the chat. You could access the chat. So can everyone see the chat? Give me a, like, I don't know, what kind of emoji I want. You could access the chat. No. Okay. Everyone can't see the chat. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not the tech person. My brother worked at Google for 20 years. He got all the computer genes. Okay. Congratulations. And for those of you who are like, oh man, I didn't win, I'm going to send everyone who stayed on this call a copy of How You Can Heal, a strength-based guide to trauma recovery. It's a PDF. It'll show up in your inbox in the next day. And I'm going to encourage you to look through that, to share it, just to help us keep grounding into good. And yes, congrats to Sarah in LA. So can we all take a moment to close? Ooh, we're a little bit over time. Sorry about that. If we could all take a moment to close, just to whatever serves you, a little stretch, a little breath, a little wiggle. You're so welcome. Yes. And congrats to the winners. Y'all are so lovely and uplifting each other. I love it so much. A little stretch, little wiggle, whatever serves you. And just whatever image comes to your mind when I say grounding into good, right? I get this image of like roots going down through my feet. I get an image of nature. I love being in nature. But what comes to your mind when you think of grounding into good? What comes to your mind when you think of healing in this moment and carrying that forward? And if nothing's coming to your mind, sometimes you're driving, you're busy, something else going on, just drop that question in. Grounding into goodness, healing. Yeah, the beauty of nature, absolutely. So let's just take a moment to I really like putting my hands on my heart. If there's something you want to do with your body that feels good, to take a breath. And I'm going to send the intention of love and healing to Los Angeles and to anyone and everyone who's here and listening, and to anyone in the world who's hurting. The yoga mantra for this is Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May all beings be safe, happy, and free. Let's just take a breath. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for being here, for sticking with me, for listening, for doing the hard work of trauma work, whether you're doing that as a provider or as a person or both. I want to honor that, I want to recognize that. It's rare that that gets seen on a wide stage unless you write a memoir or a movie comes out about it, but it so deserves acknowledgement and celebration. So I'm here to support and celebrate you. Super grateful for you and you engaging here. And I'm just sending you lots of love. I'm going to send out the recording to this and keep in touch. And if you have questions about the program, please, please, please send them over to me, Lisa at howwecanheal.com. Lots of love to you. Hope you all have a beautiful day.